afternoon. Welcome to This Week in Environmental Justice. I'm your host, Tim Cromartie, here with Tamara Raspberry Harris. How are you, Tamara?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
Very well. Things are heating up in the legislature this week. We have some bills to talk about, and we want to have you walk us through the announcement by CARB in mid-April of last month regarding emissions and automobiles and what they're doing on that end. So
a lot going on in environmental justice this week, right?
Yes, indeed. So I will start off with the first bill, which is these bills are all, the first two are going to be up in Assembly Appropriations tomorrow afternoon, May 4th. The first one is AB 1857 by Christina Garcia, and that bill has to do with solid waste. It would end the recycling credit that municipalities currently enjoy under existing law for burning of solid waste. Now, that is a provision that's been in law since 1989. Since that time, in the intervening 30 or so years, we have built up a robust recycling infrastructure. You know, we didn't have the blue can in 1989. Everybody in every major city has it now. There's a lot of incentive to, in fact, most of my waste at my house is now recycling rather than what goes into the garbage. And because of that, the authors thought it's appropriate to repeal it, but also because the burning of solid waste definitely has negative impacts on the environment. I mean, we know better at this point. We know what it's doing to the atmosphere. We know what it's doing with regard to greenhouse gas emissions. And we know what it's doing for folks with asthma and other respiratory related illnesses. So the thought is it's time to strike this provision from law. So we are supporting that one. That's up in Assembly Appropriations tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it will get through and go to the Assembly floor. Any questions on that one or comments?
You know, when I was a kid, my grandmother used to burn her trash. She had a pit in the back, and she recycled before recycling was a thing. Like she separated her trash, she composted, she did all that. She had a big green tub, and she put all her food scraps in there, and then used that. I didn't know it was composting; it was just the food scrap jar, and she used that for her garden, and then burned it. So in the 80s, clearly burning was a part of the waste reduction plan.
Oh yeah, my grandmother said the same thing.
Yeah, but we know that that reduction of trash is not offset by the carbon emissions of a fire. But why does legislature have to say that burning waste is no longer part of the policy of the state? Does it still happen anywhere else?
Well, this is a classic example of a law that should not be necessary, but apparently is, because as long as anyone can get credit for something under the law, they're going to do it, because frankly, it's easier to, in some cases, to just throw something into a pile and burn it than to make sure it's separated out appropriately and that it gets recycled, as would be better for the environment. So it's easier. And in that case, the ease of it indicates in some cases that unless you take away that recycling credit, cities are going to continue to do it in many cases. But no, we shouldn't have to legislate on this, but you know, human nature being what it is, we do.
Yeah. And this may be a little deep dive, but does this include credits that are used to offset in the cap and trade program? So then does the bill specify that?
That I don't know. That may be part of it, because certainly if you're getting the recycling credits, you definitely don't want them going to things like the cap and trade program, which is all about trying to improve the air quality. And that's one of the big points in this bill's favor, is that not repealing this credit frustrates our efforts to combat greenhouse gas emissions to do something about global warming and to promote decarbonization. Obviously, you are not promoting decarbonization if you're burning solid waste.
If you're burning.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly undermined.
Right. So who's opposed to this? What type of...
It doesn't have any serious opposition
this?
so far. The cities, by and large, have been neutral on it. They would be the one. It primarily affects them, and they would be the ones to register opposition. But I think the bottom line is the lack of opposition underscores the fact that in this day and age, we know better. We know what it's doing to the air quality. We now have alternatives that are relatively easy to use. And why continue to have this on the books? All right, this next bill is Assembly Members Mathis's AB 1956. It has to do also with solid mass, and it is a woody biomass collection pilot program. It's a 5-year pilot program that would have the state, I believe it's the Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery. They would issue grants to local counties, rural counties, for woody biomass collection. And this is literally, if you're living in a rural area and you're in proximity to woodlands or scrub brush, anything of that nature, anything that can burn, then that is the fuel that is going to help make wildfires worse. So EJL is supporting this bill because it is going to reduce the amount of available fuel in the event of the next wildfire, which is in turn going to lessen the severity of the impact of that wildfire on air quality. And as we've known in recent years, wildfires in rural areas used to be something that folks in cities didn't think about, but they have become so large and so damaging in recent years, since 2016, that if you have a wildfire in any major rural area, it's going to reach a major urban area like as not.
Right.
And
right.
That is definitely going to affect air quality. A fire up in Fresno County may definitely affect air quality in some of the parts of the state. So we're supporting that bill for that reason.
Yeah, when we had the wildfires, what was that, 4 years ago? It's been almost every summer now, probably for the last 6 years. And I woke up one morning because I smelled smoke, and I called the fire department and told them there's a fire burning. We're in the hills, so I was very concerned that I could smell fire, and it just smelled so close. And the fire department said, "Oh no, this is the fire from Santa Rosa."
Wow, yeah, it came all like across the bay. 50, 60
miles away, right? Yeah,
exactly.
It came all the way across the bay. And the next day we had ash rain down. And then remember in 2020, that summer of the shutdown, and I think my kids were still in school, and it was red outside because the wildfires from the two fires up north had made this kind of
the giant
smoke
filter
fog bubble, right? And it blocked the sun, and it looked very apocalyptic. And we were already wearing masks because of COVID,
right?
But now we had to wear masks just walking around and being outside. And then not only that, but they shut the parks down because they were trying to discourage people from walking outside.
I remember.
So wildfires aren't just an issue if you're in a rural area now; it affects everybody. Right. And if you already have, both you and I have been battling with allergies these last few weeks, and smoke filled the air, just, even if that fire is not in your backyard, you're still impacted by the smoke and the ash that's released in particulate matter. I mean, I think I don't know, maybe I'm making this up, but I thought I heard or read that the Paradise Fire, like that, the equivalent of the smoke that was released was like a volcano. I don't know if that's right or not, but it was, they could see it from space, and it was a huge, huge, huge fire that blanketed just all of Northern California.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And
go ahead.
I'm just saying, and the impact on for kids, especially when they couldn't go play with their friends or be around anything because of COVID, was doubly complicated because now they can't even go outside because of the air quality.
Right. And there's a recent CARB report on air quality in California and how many cities are suffering under extremely poor air quality, much worse than was previously acknowledged, and clearly under normal, quote unquote, new normal conditions. Most cities don't need any help with air quality or poor air quality rather, and the amount of particulate matter that's in the air in individual localities. So a bill of this type definitely is something that we think in the long term is going to be helpful and productive, because cities, even in the coastal areas, are often struggling with poor air quality, and they attribute that in part to global warming. Certainly, there's you can see particulate matter in the air in the spring and summer months here in downtown Sacramento. All you have to do is step behind a lamppost downtown and have yourself in the shade, and you will see it. So, important measure there. So there's one more bill.
Good.
It is going to Assembly Appropriations. However, it has not yet been set. Date for its hearing has not yet been set. That is AB 2797 by Assemblymember PG Norris. And this is the Decarbonizing Fuels Incentive Bill. It is very important in terms of the impact it's going to have on reducing the particulate matter from diesel emissions, which is some of the worst ever. It is definitely one of the worst contributors to asthma, COPD, respiratory ailments of whatever kind. And it's also important in that these diesel trucks very often are rolling through these low-income areas that are disproportionately Black and brown, folks that live near ports, factories, et cetera, power plants. They're breathing in diesel truck emissions. So this bill is very welcome, and we're happy to support it. We're going to be tracking it to find out when it's up in the Assembly Appropriations. So that's it. For me. Go ahead. But that's all I have.
I was going to say, sounds like a very busy time over there under the dome.
Oh, definitely.
Working to protect the environment. And so after appropriations, if these bills come out of appropriations and they switch houses and then start the process all over. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
You know, you would think after 20 years.
I knew that you knew that. You just forgot.
It's been a few years I've had to carry a bill. Exactly. So they go to the floor after they come out of appropriations, which is a whole dance unto itself, and then go to the floor for a full vote by the entire body of that House of Origin. And then if it passes, then it switches and then starts the process all over again. So they're halfway there.
Yeah. Now the Mathis bill in particular may run into some difficulty because it clearly on its face is going to take a bite out of the general fund, because the state has to foot the bill for the funding of that rural county pilot program. Anytime you see that, you know that there's going to be a definite cost associated with it. And these other measures, to varying degrees, may have some opposition from polluters, big industry, et cetera. And that becomes a factor. Technically, the dirty little secret in Sacramento is that the Appropriations Committee only looks at fiscal issues officially. But in reality, they also vet these bills for the political ramifications. And very often, many bills die in appropriations, not because of the funding, but because of the politics behind it. So we'll see what happens with each one of them. Right.
Here's a little secret. Sometimes when you are tired of carrying a bill, because you know it's going to suck the life out of you, you go ahead and let it die.
Sometimes staff are happy to have bills die, yes.
Like just keep that one on the list.
Right.
Sucking the life out of
there will not be a long morning.
I won't admit that I've done that. I've heard that has happened now.
Oh yeah. Very different.
So yeah. Okay. So keep those bills let us know how they progress along, and if anyone's listening, how they can help get involved in pushing those bills forward.
Absolutely.
So the California Air Resources Board had a big week last week. They unveiled their new well, not ZEV, EV mandate, the electric vehicle. And they unveiled a plan that would require 35% of all new passenger vehicles to be powered either by batteries or hydrogen by the 2026 model year.
Really?
And the hearing went very, very long. But a lot of the conversation was mostly about infrastructure, right? This isn't right. Industry wants to know if you build it, will you come, right? Like Field of Dreams. If you build the cars, will people buy the cars? If you build the electric vehicles, will people buy the electric vehicles? I would say yes, but people want to know they can get all the way to Southern California from, the Bay Area and Sacramento and not get stuck on the side of the road because they couldn't find a charging station.
Right. A big issue for the consumers is, okay, it's great that we've got this new technology and I can now buy this, but am I going to be able to get from point A to B reliably and without having the stress of worrying about, am I going to find a charging station if my battery goes low?
Exactly.
Am I going to be stranded? And that tends to, for me personally, as a consumer, I have to say it has a little bit of it has a significant chilling effect on my willingness to purchase. I'm all for, protecting the environment, but I want to know that this new technology is as reliable as fossil fuels. It's in terms of being able to move around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called, what is it? It's like odometer anxiety, where you see you see the countdown to how many miles you have until your engine is dead. And
not to make anybody nervous.
Right. Yeah. Like along the way, we were in that in-between zone where our gas light came on, but the next gas station was 40 miles away. And I'm like, whew, cross my fingers. Yeah. I make it to the next gas station. I'm like, turn off the AC, everyone, hold your breath. We're going to try to get through this. And I wondered, if you have an electric car, right, not only do you have to make sure the charging station is there, but they have to have fast charging because it takes a good 40 minutes to get to at least 80% charge, which is where most people who have electric vehicles, most charging stations will turn off at 80% because that's sufficient.
Right.
Especially the public ones like you see at gas stations or grocery stores. And so on a recent car trip down to Southern California, I did notice that there were some charging stations along the way. At some point, not every gas station had an electric charging station, but some of them did. Sometimes they were in hotel parking lots. Sometimes they were in the parking lot for a fast food restaurant or just an open space. But that's interesting. I think we should talk about the infrastructure. Will the infrastructure be there to support people, cars driving down I-5 and really long distances? And so was that a mistake from the ARB to not make sure that the infrastructure was there before the goal was there? The goal set, they want, 35% of all new cars. They were very clear saying that if you had a combustion car, a combustion fuel car, that car can stay on the road, right? So anyone who collects classic cars, my husband's a big car guy, his
there was going to be a lot of backlash otherwise.
Anytime soon.
Yeah.
So they were very clear at the hearing. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My father-in-law is 67 Mustang, right? Like
the gas guzzling 10 miles per gallon Mustang. But it looks cool. It looks cool.
Why don't you want a Mustang?
Right.
So those cars, they're not banned. So we have to make sure we say that what this does is just set a standard for the next phase of the electrification of transportation, the decarbonization of transportation. Right. And so setting this goal 35% by 2026. They also are proposing to ban the sale of gas fuel cars by 2035.
So any internal combustion engine vehicle would be illegal. A new one.
You couldn't buy a new one.
Okay.
Right. You
But the
couldn't buy it.
but if you already have a used vehicle of that type, you can continue to operate it, you can sell it, etc.
Right. Right.
But
So in
newly
2035,
manufactured internal combustion vehicles would be banned.
the manufacturers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was surprised. I didn't hear a lot of opposition by what we call OEMs, the original manufacturers, on this mandate. Obviously, a lot of, like Volvo has set some goals for their own fleet. Ford has set goals for their own fleet. So the manufacturers have set their internal goals of making sure these cars are available. But, in 2035, my kids will be driving by then. Will those cars be available for them? Will the market respond to this? No one's going to build a car just for California, right?
Right. Exactly.
So,
oh no, wait, that may or may not be true, because California has the biggest. We buy more cars per capita than any other state. We are 11% of the national market. I was surprised. I'm not surprised when I think about the fact that, let's face it, California is a car culture, but still. So they might be planning to, tailor some of their marketing plan, the auto manufacturers, to California specifically. And I think the reason there was no pushback is they get it. They're all, retooling for eventual ZEV production exclusively, because they know the fossil fuel thing is eventually on its way out, and they're trying to cash in on it. So they're investing. They're behind. They're supporting a lot of the cobalt mining that's going on in Congo and Africa, for example, because they are benefiting from being able to get that raw material, which is a key ingredient in the manufacture of electric batteries. But you mentioned a good point in terms of, has CARB made a mistake by rolling out this goal? I don't think it's a mistake in that it's a good environmental objective. We certainly need to be moving in this direction, but there's two other things that the state and CARB need to be doing, which is to devote resources to make sure the infrastructure is in place, that there's ample electric charging stations so that the public in general can feel comfortable buying a car, a ZEV car, and to know that they can get up and down I-5, for example, or take a long road trip without having to worry about being stranded. Oh my God. But also not just invest in that infrastructure, but do a public education campaign. Somebody's got to be devoted to a public education campaign to get it into the public consciousness that, yes, this is changing. This technology is available. You will be able to rely on these vehicles because we're going to have charging stations throughout. If you can convince, the average voter that you've got literally a spider web of charging stations through most of the areas in the state, then you're good. But until they get there, until that's done, or that becomes part of the master plan, then there's an argument that, maybe this was a mistake, because you can't have the objective in your manufacturing without the infrastructure and the public education campaign to go with, in my opinion.
Right. And if you take a city like high density cities, like here in Oakland, very high density, San Francisco is very high density, LA, which is completely car dependent, is extremely high density. Those would be the key markets that manufacturers want to make sure they get the cars in the market. But if the infrastructure is not there, like if everyone who lives in an apartment building drives home, does everyone have a plug to put in their electric vehicle? Obviously new homes will have to be built like that, but how do you retrofit multifamily housing units to accommodate that? And if this mandate is adopted, does that trickle down? Will there be infrastructure assistance for, maybe it's just, a family that owns some a 4-unit apartment building? Will they be able to access some funds to be able to retrofit that building to accommodate for 4 charging stations?
Well, the state certainly did that for homeowners with regard to solar panels. I think the money
they did, but who took advantage of that, right?
It was mainly the wealthier homeowners. Let's be real.
Very wealthy homeowners who lived on the coast, right? You fly over
not exclusively.
a city. Not exclusively, but if you do a market, like let's take San Diego. So San Diego or the Bay Area, you have, and I know this from my days when I was at the utility, but I would say a very large percentage of the solar panels that were people who had applied for solar panel, the special rate for solar panels were along the coastal areas of San Diego County. So from like Carlsbad, Oceanside, all the way down to the border. But those areas get a lot of fog, and you go 10 miles inland where the temperature changes drastically, and the solar panels people weren't adding solar panels onto the house at the same rate as they were on, like 5 miles from the coast.
Right.
And so and if you fly over, any town, you could see you don't have to fly over, you can take a walk and you can see the solar panels in those neighborhoods,
right.
But whose neighborhoods are they going into, right? So how do you offset the cost of electrifying the transportation system,
right,
if the infrastructure is not there to support it?
And there's an issue there with public education and who gets access and who knows about these things.
Right.
I remember my mother, before she passed, she had a house in Richmond, and she got her around 2002, 2003. She had her house retrofitted with solar panels.
Yeah.
I believe she was almost the only one in her neighborhood to do so.
Early adapter.
Yeah. Now they paid for themselves within about 2 years, but
right.
She was far and away in the minority, and it was a predominantly Black neighborhood at the time. So you raise a good point in terms of who's going to get access and who's going to have ready access and, move in circles where they've got timely access to the information. Because very often in communities of color, we tend to find out about these things last, if at all.
Right. So
that's another issue. How aggressive is the government's outreach? What is their plan for that? And how much funding is attached?
Yeah.
So,
and those are all questions that we don't have the answer to, but you would hope that those who are making the policies are also considering this also. And Tim, I think you should also know that if your mother's house in Richmond was in the neighborhood I think it's in, that there have been more solar panels added to that. I could tell you because my family goes to a track meet every Sunday at Salesian High School. And so, a lot of those houses have been retrofitted, but also as a result of gentrification, as families have sold the properties, right? So it's a whole trickle down effect.
And you have a wave of millennials that are now doing the home buying, and they tend to be more environmentally aware. They're looking for things like that.
And they take advantage of, the discounts that come along with putting on solar panels. You get the reduction here and as a homeowner, and take advantage of the programs. There's still people, though, I'm sure, I don't know if your mother sought out the solar panels or if someone knocked on her door and said, would you like solar panels? Because that's still happening.
It was me because I was working at the state. I was working at the Department of Housing at the time. So she had special access.
Yes. Was that PACE?
I think it was. They don't fund it anymore, but I made sure that she knew about it.
Right. Yeah. Which a lot of my parents took advantage of that too, and have solar panels. But because my dad is still a child of his time, they never turn on the air conditioning. I'm like, but you have solar panels. It's 80 degrees in here.
Right.
Turn on the AC.
Yeah, you can do that.
So, so the education, the infrastructure, this trickle down effect of making sure that, if they build it, it will come, right? They put this mandate in place, which is only by ARB, that has to, I'm sure that can be challenged in court somehow. It's not a law of the legislature. It's not laws made by elected officials, and it's following an executive order, which we know executive orders change between administrations. So will the next administration maintain this moving forward and keep the agencies moving towards that goal? So this is a real interesting conversation, but it affects so many people. And maybe some people don't know that it's coming. And so you're right, we have to provide education So people know you don't have to get rid of your car. The state's not telling you, well, that, 89 or 1992 Honda Accord that keeps going and going and going. You don't have to get rid of that, but new cars manufactured and sold in the state after 2035 will have to be electric or zero emission vehicles.
Absolutely, and I want to touch on what you mentioned about that executive order. That was an executive order of Governor Newsom. And he directed that the production be phased out of the fossil fuel burning vehicles would, we're trying to get to the point that we're carbon neutral by the year 2045. So his executive order was this action by CARB is in furtherance of that executive order. But I'm curious, at that hearing, did they talk about the need for infrastructure, specifically the ensuring that there are sufficient number of charging stations throughout the state and in the inner city areas? And did they talk about, East, there's going to be a charging station in East Oakland, for example, East Palo Alto, East LA. Are we going to have fair access? And then the other thing is, did they talk about a public education campaign to get the public to a certain comfort level? Did those things come up at all?
It came up as just a single line in the presentation that it will be addressed. And how they are addressing it are through hiring consultants and vendors and third parties, and maybe accessing the talents of a group like the Environmental Justice League to help educate the community. Yeah, so they were very clear that we don't have it all figured out, but we know it's part of the plan, and had set aside for work groups that would happen within the communities. And it was very specific. It was a line in the presentation that said a third party or a consultant would handle that part of it. So
at least it's on their radar.
It's on their radar. And because when I went through this, the ZEV mandate as we approached 2020, and I worked on this in 2010 for the 2020 mandate, that was not part of the discussion at all.
Wow.
So the last 10 years, the department obviously has made progress in saying that this isn't an afterthought, but that engaging impacted communities needs to be part of the plan from the beginning, and not as we'll set aside this after we get this part done.
Right.
So I commend that the Air Resources Board has really grown and changed in the last 10 years, probably the last 5 years, because this was something that would never been discussed 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people doing the public comment did discuss the need for more public engagement and more public education to ensure that the infrastructure just doesn't run down I-5, but then branches off into the cities.
Right. Or in the upper middle class neighborhoods only.
Right. Yeah. Because if you go to, a Whole Foods, there's one down the street here, the parking lot on the top has like 8 or 9 charging stations.
Right.
Well, I don't see that in San Leandro. Don't see that too much in the Flatlands.
You'll see it in Montclair, but you may not see it in West Oakland. Or East Oakland.
Like I said, in West Oakland, I haven't seen very many in Richmond. Even in some of the smaller suburban areas like Vallejo and Fairfield, I don't see as many as I see in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So and I would beg that probably the suburbs have more cars than some of their neighboring cities, just because the availability of public transportation is stronger in cities than they are in suburbia. So anyway, but yeah, the highway, the infrastructure highway for electric vehicles is coming. So
yeah, well, it shouldn't just be electric; it should also be natural gas. Because
they did talk about hydrogen.
We need
hydrogen fueled. Yeah,
I mean, the point is we need all of those things including the non-electric zero emission vehicles. And the reason being that the natural gas, the hydrogen type vehicles will help reduce emissions much faster in the short term.
Right.
The scientists are right when they say the natural gas is not a long-term solution. No one's arguing that, but it is a good short-term solution to slash emissions for particularly relevant for communities that are suffering from asthma, COPD, other respiratory ailments now and need the immediate relief.
Right.
Because the emissions benefits from electric are undeniable, but they are longer term. It's going to take them longer to take effect. Excuse me. So just something for all of us to bear in mind as we go forward every time we talk about this policy area.
Right. The heavy duty vehicles, they were discussed, and how, EV probably doesn't work for an EV mandate for heavy duty and medium duty vehicles.
So for a semi that's going to Chicago,
right?
LA,
yeah,
not going to happen.
Yeah. You can't it'd be very difficult to electrify that, but a natural gas based fuel apparently is something that's where the ZEV mandate of the mandate comes in, the zero emission mandate, zero emission vehicle.
The trucks that are being used for intrastate, in other words, within a state commerce, they're fair game. All the light duty vehicles that we've already been talking about, they're fair game, but also the fleets of vehicles owned by, local government entities, the buses, the Muni and Francisco, with the bus system here in Sacramento, for example, all those things, the school buses, they can all, they're not going 1,000 miles. So they can be converted easily. And in fact, I'm looking for a program that is specifically targeting local governments to try to fund and encourage them to switch over to ZEV as quickly as possible. I'm sure it's out there. I haven't seen it yet, though.
Oh, yeah, it's out there. You know why it's out there? Because I see CNG buses all over the place.
I saw one in Berkeley. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I took a photo of it because I'd never seen that before. Wow.
When they first rolled out, I didn't drive it. I got to ride in one. It was very strange because it's a very quiet bus. You're used to hearing in a bus,
right? Exactly.
Especially
Where's
a city bus, the rumble. Exactly. It was very quiet. You're like, oh, I don't know. I like that.
That part of it is
really
strange.
Nice though, because it's a very odd sensation that there's a quiet bus, but hey, it's not, releasing emissions out, right? Around the kids and around the neighborhood. So, I'm sure this is with the infrastructure.
My neighbor has an electric car, and I was walking the dog a couple days ago, and it came up, and as the car came up, it was weird because I heard this hum. And I was like, and the guy pulls into the driveway. I didn't like that. The opportunity to creep up on me, I didn't like it at all. I want to hear that engine.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter told me, we could end on this note, nice little peaceful note. She said, Mommy, I love the sound of electric cars. They sound like peace.
That's good.
From the mouth of babes.
And on that note, out of the mouths of babes comes the wave of the future.
Right? Exactly. Right. Exactly.
I think we will wrap up on that note. Thank you so much. This has been a great broadcast.
Thank you, Tim. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, indeed.
And I look forward to hearing what's going to happen next week in Environmental Justice League.
Yes, indeed.
How's that CAPE order going?
Oh, the CAPEs. That's a losing battle. Now there's discussion about teal. I was like, no, you can't be serious. The wrong color. It should match the green in the logo. That is definitely not teal.
Yeah.
That's more of a forest.
Yeah.
Any fool can see that's forest green.
It looks like trees.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's trees. Yeah. All right, good. Well, maybe next time we'll get our capes.
Keep lobbying.
All right. As always, good talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.